Ah, the Chinese emperor. The apex of ancient luxury. Silk robes, golden dragons, a palace bigger than your hometown, and of course, a harem of 300 wives. Sounds like the ultimate fantasy, right? Wrong. Turns out being the supreme ruler of ancient China was more like being a glorified babysitter for power-hungry concubines, paranoid eunuchs, meteor-exploding farmers, and a population that blamed you every time a pigeon sneezed. Let's take a long dive into why being a Chinese emperor was a non-stop nightmare in gold-embroidered pajamas. Let's start with the wives. Yes, 300 of them. That's not a metaphor, an exaggeration, or some spicy ancient gossip. That was the job. An emperor's harem wasn't a luxury, it was a geopolitical minefield dressed in silk. These women weren't chosen for compatibility. They were chosen because their families were powerful, their provinces were strategic, or someone owed someone a favor. Some were nobles' daughters, some were tokens of tribute, and some were there because the royal advisors spun a wheel and picked a name. Each wife brought with her an entire faction, a list of family expectations, a belief system, and the assumption that she would become the mother of the next emperor. Imagine every evening being a full-blown United Nations meeting, except with more jewelry and secret vendettas. They didn't live in harmony, they lived in constant competition. Every gesture was analyzed, every word had subtext, a smile could mean friendship or assassination, and every one of them thought they were your soulmate, your destiny, and your political responsibility. You think remembering birthdays is tough? Try remembering 300 names, origin stories, political affiliations, favorite tea blends, forbidden herbs, family grudges, and who secretly controls the pepper import trade. One wrong flower in one wrong courtyard, and you've just triggered a provincial uprising. There was an actual bureaucratic process for picking who you'd spend time with each night. A eunuch rolled in with a scroll longer than a tax audit, and you'd point, hoping this time it wouldn't set off a 5-faction feud over favoritism. The chosen wife would arrive in ceremony, and you'd spend the evening making sure you didn't insult anyone's region, dialect, or ancestor. You might think all this courtship nonsense would at least have its perks. Nope. Ancient China didn't run on romance, it ran on succession. Producing heirs wasn't a hobby, it was a national security strategy. If you didn't have enough sons, the empire looked unstable. If you had too many, the empire became unstable. It was like a breeding game with no win condition. But here's the catch. It wasn't about passion. It was about spreadsheets. Advisors tracked your interactions with terrifying precision. Who you visited, when, for how long. If it seemed like you were neglecting one faction's representative in the harem, you risked causing political unrest. To avoid favoritism, emperors had to follow rigid schedules, rotating through wives like a socially pressured hamster wheel. Let's talk about the eunuchs. Oh yes, the loyal palace staff who had to sacrifice a lot just to work inside. Eunuchs weren't just guards. They were your informants, secretaries, political advisors, spies, therapists, and sometimes your worst nightmares. These guys knew everything. They were everywhere. Think of them as living, breathing, whispering palace surveillance systems. They didn't have wives. They didn't have kids. So guess what? They had all the time in the world to focus on court politics. And they did. Some eunuchs grew more powerful than ministers. They built their own networks, formed alliances, and influenced succession. Others were just bitter and gossipy, turning palace drama into dangerous whispers. You couldn't raise your eyebrow without a eunuch noticing. You couldn't trust anyone without them giving their input. Some were loyal, others were double agents in silk shoes. Eunuchs weren't emotionless drones. They were human beings. Very ambitious, very bored human beings with access to every secret in the empire. And when they didn't like you, they had the time, creativity, and access to make your life miserable without ever raising a sword. Imagine trying to govern a vast empire while also managing a network of emotionally unstable shadow bureaucrats who know where you sleep. If you thought Thanksgiving with your weird uncle was bad, try ruling an empire with an entire family tree that looks like a tournament bracket of betrayal. The royal family was a living minefield. Every branch was plotting something. Cousins who smiled too much? Spies. Aunts who brought gifts? Bribes. That quiet nephew with the hobby for poetry? Secretly planning a coup and writing haikus about stabbing you in your sleep. Your half-brother? He's probably raising an army in the western provinces. Your uncle? Trying to get his son declared chosen of heaven. Your own son? Not sure if he's writing a birthday card or a death warrant. And heaven forbid you got sick. The palace turned into a betting ring. Who'll be next on the throne? Who'll mysteriously find the imperial seal in their sock drawer? Family reunions weren't emotional, they were tactical. Even your mom? Yeah, she's lovely. Until she starts suggesting you promote your third cousin to Minister of War because he has a nice smile. Everyone wanted a piece of the pie, and they didn't want to wait until you were done chewing. They were ready to drag your half-conscious body off the throne the moment you blinked too slow. Let's talk about lunch, or dinner, or snacks, or that one innocent-looking dumpling that's probably stuffed with crushed beetles, lotus root, and just a dash of cyanide. You had official tasters, sure, but guess what? So did the last emperor, and now he's a cautionary tale buried in a jade coffin with a suspiciously bloated stomach. You couldn't eat anything without first watching someone else eat it and wait 10 minutes to see if they collapsed. Sometimes meals were just a series of intense staring contests with your taster. Even tea became a thriller. Would you like the jasmine blend or the one with crushed dreams and betrayal? It got so bad some emperors ate food only prepared in randomly selected kitchens. Others rotated their chefs every week. One paranoid ruler only drank soup boiled by a eunuch who couldn't read or write, figured he couldn't be bribed if he didn't know what a recipe was. And toilets? Don't even start. Ancient royal toilets were basically holes over large pits, which sounds fine until you realize some emperors literally died falling into them. No one wants their official biography to end with death by poop hole. Some emperors had custom-built toilets with guards, gates, even animal decoys to distract potential assassins, because apparently your worst enemy might strike while you're mid-squat. Being the emperor didn't just mean ruling people. You also had to manage the sky. Yes, the literal sky. Flood? Your fault. Drought? Your fault. Locusts? That's on you. Your neighbor's ox tripped and stubbed its hoof? Yep, you guessed it. Also your fault. According to the mandate of heaven, if things got too rough, it meant the gods were mad at you personally, not at the government, at you. And you couldn't just say, well, weather's unpredictable. Nope. You had to perform rituals, massive, expensive, emotionally exhausting ceremonies to calm the heavens. Sacrifices, hours of chanting, dancing, kneeling, crying, all in front of crowds who were also crying, mostly because their rice fields were underwater and their roofs were now riverboats. If 2 disasters happened in a row, that was practically a cosmic pink slip. Officials would start whispering, maybe the heavens want someone taller or with better cheekbones. And yes, people really blamed meteorites on you. A rock fell from space and destroyed my shed? Must be a sign. The emperor probably skipped his cloud prayers again. You'd think that after living in this endless hellscape of drama, poison, betrayal, and diarrhea danger, death would finally bring peace. Wrong again, dragon pajamas. When you died, that's when the second nightmare began. The afterlife onboarding process. First, your tomb. It had to be huge, like visible from space if you squint huge, and expensive, and full of stuff you didn't even use in life. Gold, jade, weapons, statues, vases, weird ceremonial furniture, and enough fake food to supply an imaginary buffet for eternity. But wait, not fake, real fake. Crafted for spirits, expensive as hell and hand-painted by some poor artist with a broken back and 3 unpaid apprentices. And let's not forget people, servants, guards, artisans, animals, all buried with you. Some were symbolic effigies, some weren't. Some emperors insisted on being buried with living people to serve them in the next world. Meaning some poor stable boy found himself in a tomb next to a gold horse wondering what the hell he did to deserve this. But even that didn't guarantee peace, because grave robbers were out there, baby, and they were like ancient Amazon Prime, fast, efficient, and completely lacking morals. They'd dig up your tomb before your ghost even settled in, steal your stuff, and probably melt your gold statue into coins with your face on them, then use them to bribe officials in your own empire. Some emperors built full underground death cities with traps, puzzles, walls that spit arrows, and stone slabs rigged to crush intruders. You know your life was stressful when you die and still think, better add 18 spike pits just in case. So yeah, Chinese emperor sounds majestic. But in practice, it's just unpaid overtime with fancier clothes and significantly higher chances of being poisoned by breakfast. You spend your days juggling paperwork, backstabbing relatives, moody weather gods, assassins in bathrobes, dramatic nobles, and enough ceremonial nonsense to make a theme park look chill. You're followed by advisors who hate you, wives who plot against you, eunuchs who whisper too much, and chefs who probably want to test your reaction to arsenic. And if you die, congrats. You're now a piñata for robbers with shovels and dreams. All that for the possibility of being remembered as not the worst one. So next time you complain about your boss, just remember, at least your job doesn't end with 300 relatives trying to frame you for bad weather.